Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here, your source for gaming, tech, emulation, and open source news. Let's get started. Alright, we'll kick things off talking about Nintendo 64 emulation on Windows and Linux with Simple64, and Simple64 just got a simple update. So as of this video, the latest version of Simple64 is 2024.01.1. And this one updates the Mupen 64 Plus core and parallel RSP to the latest versions. Now, Simple64 is usually pretty active. In fact, the last update was in November of last year. If you want it for Windows, check out their GitHub. If you want it for Linux, check out their FlatHub. I'll drop a link to both in the description below, and I do recommend checking them out. They're 100% free and open source. And speaking about open source, and speaking about N64, and speaking about Mupen, next up we're talking about N64 emulation on PC with RMG. RMG stands for Subscribe to Mr. Sujano, or Rosalies Mupen GUI, depending on how you want to interpret that. And RMG just got a brand new update. At the time of filming, version 0.5.5 is the latest update, and this update is similar to Simple64. They've updated the Mupen 64 Plus core, parallel RSP, but also a little bit more. Glide N64 and the Game Controller DB to make more controllers compatible with it. RMG is available for both Windows and Linux. If you want it on Windows, head to their GitHub. If you want it on Linux, I'd recommend going to FlatHub. But if you're on Arch, they've got you covered with AUR. And they've also got a version over on Fedora. If you were to ask me which one is better between the two, Simple64 and RMG, my answer here is use both and see which one you like the best. Next up, we're talking about Game Boy emulation on Windows, Mac, and iOS with SameBoy, and SameBoy just dropped version 0.16.2. So for this update, we've got some bug fixes and improvements. If you're using this emulator on Windows 7 and you're experiencing some crashing, they've removed Xaudio 2.7 and replaced it with 2.9, and that should fix some things for you. And for improvements, SameBoy is now a little bit more accurate, which means it behaves more closely to an actual Game Boy. I'm a big fan of accuracy improvements. The harder it is to tell between an actual game running and an emulator running is fine by me. However, I also like to upscale and have some fun that way too, so I'm a fan of accuracy, and I'm also a fan of making it better. Anyways, SameBoy is 100% free, it's open source, and I'll drop a link to it in the description below. Next up, we're talking about Nintendo 3DS emulation in VR with CitraVR. And CitraVR is arriving on January 20th. Now, although Citra could already be used in VR on PC, this is a little bit different. This is CitraVR. It runs natively on the Quest as an OpenXR application. If you wanted to see CitraVR in action, I'll drop a link to Gamertag VR's video in the description below, and I do recommend having a look. Now, there are a few things worth pointing out, and the very first thing here is that CitraVR is not an official version of Citra. It's not made by the Citra team, it's a port of Citra. So if you head to the Citra Discord and start asking them about CitraVR, chances are they're not going to be able to help you. And the developer does say on this one, it will be open source and GPL compliant. Personally, I'm looking forward to this one, and I'm hoping that it opens the door for more VR ports in the future, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. Next up, we're talking about a brand new retro gaming handheld, one with a very interesting concept. It was spotted by RetroDodo. I'll drop a link to this in the description below, and I do recommend checking out the article. If this device is real, it's not messing around. It's supposed to have a Snapdragon 888 CPU. The screen on this one is 1080p at only 3.9 inches. And the screen rotates. Yes, you heard that right. And no, I'm not joking with you. The screen is designed to rotate. It's a neat concept, one that I don't think is necessary, but cool nonetheless. This thing is called the Small Universe X Sugar Cubes. I've got no idea on release date. I'm assuming it's running Android. I've got no idea on price. I'm assuming it's going to be pretty pricey based on the specs and what it can do. Let me know your thoughts about this one in the comments below. Next up, we're talking about Billy Mitchell and Twin Galaxies, and the whole saga between them appears to be over. It's reported that they have settled. For those of you who may not be aware, there is a ton of backstory here, and I mean a whole ton, more than we're getting into in this video. I could be talking about it for hours. Anyways, at a super high level, the way I understand it is that Billy Mitchell is a fantastic arcade Donkey Kong player and a fantastic Pac-Man player. Billy Mitchell had some high scores for Donkey Kong. They were questionable high scores, and people might have thought he used an emulator. Not that I have a problem with that. Well, Twin Galaxies kind of did. And Twin Galaxies removed his high scores and also banned him from ever submitting a high score again. And Billy Mitchell's Guinness World Record was taken away as a result. And then Billy Mitchell decided to get upset and countersue for defamation. Anyways, after all of that, I think that was back in 2019. In 2020, Guinness World Records re-reviewed the situation and reinstated Billy Mitchell's records, a whole bunch of them. They even went as far as to make a statement on YouTube about the whole situation. Now fast forward to present day, and this battle has been super public between Billy Mitchell and Twin Galaxies, and they reached a private settlement, which means we don't know the details. However, since Twin Galaxies scores are public, it might be easy to find out who got the potential better end of the settlement deal. If I take a look at the high scores here for Donkey Kong, I do not see Billy Mitchell's name on this list. I don't know if it's going to be updated. I don't know if I'll have to check back later. But this whole thing is super interesting. Moving on, and we're quickly talking about Elden Ring DLC, and it appears that some stuff has popped up on SteamDB, and a lot of people are thinking that it's their DLC Shadow of the Erdtree. So if we go on ahead and take a look at SteamDB under Elden Ring and under DLC, we can see something new was just added for the first time in close to a year. So it makes me wonder, is this the new DLC? I mean, it would match up. And it would match up with that Thrustmaster ad that leaked earlier on that said it was syncing with the Elden Ring DLC launching in February. So who knows what's going to happen here? This could end up being a massive nothing burger, but a lot of people are expecting an announcement in the very near future. I guess we'll have to stay tuned. Moving on, and we're quickly talking about Ubisoft, and I'd argue not in a very good way. There's a very interesting article over on gamesindustry.biz. I'll drop a link to it in the description below, and I do recommend checking it out. It's titled The New Ubisoft Plus and Getting Gamers Comfortable with Not Owning Their Games. Now, Ubisoft has a service similar to Xbox Game Pass, which I don't disagree with. You pay a monthly fee, you get access to a whole bunch of different games, and you don't have to buy those games individually. You can play a lot of games for not really a lot of money when you think about it. It's a great way to experience a wide variety of games, especially if you only play them once or twice and never play them again. However, this quote here from Philippe Tremblay, who's the director of subscriptions over at Ubisoft, doesn't sit right with me. He says, one of the things we saw is that gamers are used to, a little bit like DVD, having and owning their games. That's the consumer shift that needs to happen. They got comfortable not owning their CD collection or DVD collection. That's a transformation that's been a bit slower to happen in games. So it's about feeling comfortable with not owning your game, and that's just something I can't get behind. Yes, I understand from a subscription standpoint that makes sense. Get people to join who just want to play a little bit and don't care. But at the same time, trying to make the whole industry shift to not owning games kind of sucks. Let me know your thoughts about this one in the comments below. Do you like to own your games, or do you like a subscription service? And do you care whether or not games that you previously played on a subscription service are no longer available? And speaking about games, next up we're quickly talking about Gamestop. And it appears that Gamestop is winding down their NFT marketplace. I'll drop a link to this announcement in the description below, but it says Gamestop has decided to wind down our NFT marketplace due to the continuing regulatory uncertainty of the crypto space, effective as of February 2nd, 2024, which is really soon. Customers will no longer be able to buy, sell, or create NFTs. But moving on, and we're talking about Ruffle, an open source Flash player emulator, and Ruffle just posted their 2023 year in review. I'll drop a link to this post in the description below, and I do recommend checking it out. It's a good read. They fixed a whole lot of bugs this year, 1,288 issues. There's a ton of merges here, 852. Ruffle has optimized and implemented 7 out of the 10 filter effects for Flash. The other 3 are seldom used. There's been a bunch of improvements to text rendering. Any game that relied on sockets, like Club Penguin, now works, and sockets works right out of the box on the desktop edition of Ruffle. On top of that, there is a whole bunch more. Ruffle has made a ton of progress this this year, and I can't wait to see what they do next. Moving on, and we're talking about a brand new English translation available for a game on the PSP. It's called Shiren 4 Plus, The Wanderer, The Eye of God, and the Devil's Navel. Apparently this patch was 4 years in the making, and this is for an RPG, so there's probably a whole ton of text, and that English translation will be beneficial in actually enjoying the game. Moving on, and we're quickly talking about Simcoupe, which is an emulator for the SAM Coupe, a computer released in the 80s. And version 1.2.13 of this emulator just dropped. It's the first release in a year. It contains a number of bug fixes. Now, I've never seen a SAM Coupe in real life, considering it's a British computer, but the games on here look pretty interesting, and someone even made a Flappy Bird port for it. And last up, this is a fun one. Someone made a custom PS5 Tablet edition. When I first heard about this, I thought, what's the big deal? Just take a portable monitor and stick it to the side of a PS5. But this is a little bit more complicated and arguably a lot more cool. I'll drop a link to this video in the description below, and I do recommend checking it out. On the left, we've got the PS5, and on the right is the custom PS5 Tablet edition. There is a massive difference in size, and arguably what the PS5 Slim should have been sized like. The video showcases the build in detail. I thought cooling might be an issue, but he's got 3 fans on the back of this thing, and it didn't look like cooling was an issue at all. Overall here, I think Sony would have hit a home run if they released something like this. Maybe not. Let me know your thoughts about this one in the comments below. But anyways, that is all I've got for you in this one. Straight to the point, all stuff and no fluff. We talked about a bunch today. Let me know your thoughts about absolutely any of it in the comments below. If you like this video, leave a like. If you didn't like this video, leave a like. Hit that subscribe button, check out my other videos. Don't tempt fate, save your state.